Well, hello YouTube, this is RL coming to you again from my channel, and I have a new topic for you today. But before we get to that, I will be introducing, again, my special guest, CK.
How's everybody doing?
So this will be our second podcast regarding video games. The last one was about open world, and it was a very enjoyable podcast. So we're doing another one. Why not? We're going to talk about Shadow Colossus.
That's right.
My first experience with Team Eco was with the game Eco. Never heard of this game until I bought PlayStation 2 magazine, and it had a demo disc, and the demo disc was with Eco on it. I don't know if people call it Ico or Eco. I call it Eco. Do you call it Ico?
I call it Eco as well. It could be
Yeah.
Ico though.
The first time I saw it, I thought it was ICO, and I was like, all right, what is ICO? And then I called it Eco, so I'm
Right.
going to call it Eco. Tomato, tomato, right?
Tomato,
So
tomato. That's right.
if I spoke to the Team Eco and they said, hey, it's Ico, then I still would call it Eco, you know? Yeah, I thought it was an amazing game. I never saw anything like it before. The graphics at the time were pretty amazing. The water effects, it almost looked like real water. I was pretty impressed with the story, the atmosphere, and just the idea. It was such a different game. And it's a beautiful story of this boy with horns where they lock him up into his tomb because every 1,000 years a boy with horns is sacrificed. And some kind of earthquake happens and he escapes from his little tomb. Try to find a way out of the castle. He discovers this girl.
Ethereal figure, kind of like a ghostish type
Yeah,
of
she's a
thing.
ghostish figure.
Yeah.
And they both don't speak the same language. Made his decision to save her and
Nice.
bring her along in his journey. And it's a beautiful story. And the puzzles are very organic. They're very beautifully done. It's one of those games that I fell in love with because of the style of it. And I never see anything like it. That's what I loved about the PS2 at the time. There was so many unique games that we didn't get on the PS1.
That's right.
And it wasn't just about graphics. It was about gameplay. Red Faction was another one where you could blow up walls in real time. We're not able to do that in PS1. So that was cool. You know, there was certain games that were like, okay, this is pushing boundaries, and it's not about the graphics, it's about improving the gameplay as well. And Eco, I still consider it one of my favorite games of all time. And when I found out that Team Eco was making another game, I was excited, and that ended up being Shadow Colossus.
Yes, which is where I was introduced, I guess, fully to the Team Eco game development. I had seen Shadow before I heard of Eco, and then after I found out about Shadow, I'm like, oh, this game is fantastic. And then realized that they had built a game prior to this. I'm like, oh. And then I got a chance to see the game, and I was just like, okay, this is a platformer with physics and a fantastic story underlying the whole thing, active storytelling. I mean, ultimately, this is a puzzle game at its core with a story. It did intrigue me, and I've played a little bit, but I could never get my hands on it. So I had maybe like 30 minutes into Eco after I had played Shadow, and then didn't end up looking at Eco again until, well after Shadow became a big thing. And then I looked back at the game and was like, you know what, I should get a chance to play this. Bought the game, and it's sitting on the shelf. I never actually had a chance to play it through.
Racing games,
rig.
that's your go-to when you're playing video games. There's
That's
a limited time you have to play video games. It's always going to be the racing games. And hey, that's all. We all like what we like. And
That's right.
no, I'm going to change that. I do suggest play Eco and give it a chance. I don't know if you have the PS2. I know there was a time when it was very hard to find a copy of Eco.
Oh, yes.
When it first came out on the PS2, there was a while where people couldn't get it. But now it's easy because, I mean, there's so many versions. Like, but
I
if you have it,
the combo kit. I have the Eco and Shadow combo.
give it a shot. But we're supposed to talk about Shadow Colossus today, not Ego. We're mostly talking about Ego. When are we going to get to Shadow Colossus? But so what was your first experience playing Shadow Colossus, and what did you think?
I picked up the game off of a friend, actually. Heard about it, saw it, and was like, you know what, I gotta try and play this game. It's cool because at the time I was a big, like I said, racing fan with regards to games, and very few kind of platformers and a couple of other games here and there with regards to the PlayStation. And I love an immersive story. And I think the RPG-ish, and I will say it, and people will disagree, and you have the right to, aspect of it, playing the character through this story and the simplicity of the, get into the game and everything is a boss battle was a change in the gaming environment. Everyone was used to, you grinding your way up into, a mid-boss, and then from your mid-boss, you grinding your way to the main boss, and then you move on to the next stage and there'd be another boss. Whereas in this one, it's strictly just straight to the boss battle. And the boss battle with these immersive and immense colossi was just different because there were no monstrous bosses in games. People, I think, didn't know how to construct them. And when I saw the first battle, the first one that you get to, kind of the Minotaur type Colossus, I'm like, that's insane. And then climbing on him and riding your horse, calling your horse. And I think the physics of the game itself, when you talk about the immersion and talk about the simplicity and the beauty of it, the environment, fantastic. And even on the PlayStation with its depth rendering, which wasn't the greatest, really got you into the world that this character is in. I think his name's Wander, or the Wanderer, or something like that.
And the horse was called Argo.
Agro? Yeah, one of those
Argo.
two.
I think it was Argo. I haven't played in a while. One of those games that I played when I was younger, and I just loved it. It's Eco and Shadow Colossus would rank 1-2 for me as the greatest games of all time for me on my list, you know?
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like complaining about the frame rate in Shadow Colossus on the PS2, but I never had an issue with it. I found the frame rate was acceptable. There were times where it felt a little choppy, but some people were saying it was felt like a stop animation.
Like stop motion?
Kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I don't. Maybe they had a bad copy or the PS2 was butchered. I don't know, but I never had that experience.
I never had that experience either.
It was never like that bad where you couldn't play it. But when it came on PS4, that remake is beautiful. I recommend playing it on the remake if anyone hasn't experienced it or don't know of this game because they never grew up on the PS2. I would suggest playing it on the PS4 because it's beautiful.
It's a beautiful game.
They
totally
recaptured the whole game. It's exactly the same, but it's obviously enhanced. An identical game, but it's made for the PS4 and it uses the hardware. But it was always amazing. The fur on the Colossus looked always amazing. Even on the PS2, I'd never seen fur on such beautiful Colossus that looks so organic and real. People call them boss fights, but I almost consider that an insult because a lot of the boss fights at the time were very generic. I felt these were like levels. You know, each Colossi was like a level. It was just beautiful. You feel a little guilty that you have to kill them. You know, some of them are so docile they're not even attacking you.
That is true. They are living in the world in their own space, in their own time, and you have this foreigner, for lack of a better term, coming through and changing the way they exist. And I agree. You're right. It's more like a level because ultimately the battle and the puzzles within engaging is technically like you making your way through a level. So, I guess the boss part of it is really just the character concept. But as for the actual fight itself, the engagement, it is like a level because you are making your way through all kinds of environment and on the Colossus as well. Managing your stamina, managing your timing. The physics, again, were what drew me to the game when Wander is riding aggro and the mane and the fur and his shawl and everything about it was like real physics, real vector physics, the light refraction, the ray tracing, everything. And I'm like, how are they doing this in a console like the PS2? Yeah.
It was amazing what they pushed the limits of the PS2, and it was a game that was so beautiful. You didn't feel like the horse was fake. You didn't feel like anything was fake. It felt like organic. People even fell in love with the horse. There was a connection with the horse and the Wanderer, and it was like when he felt like he died, or the horse never died, but there was a time where he jumped and he fell, and you were like, oh my god, he lost the horse, and it was tragic. That just tells you how beautifully they crafted this world and made it a gaming experience that was like no other. It wasn't like you were playing a video game. It was like you were in this world.
That's right.
Perfect game that would be one day to make it as a VR.
Oh my gosh, a fantastic VR game.
My gosh. Was that game that they made recently,
The Last Guardian.
Last Guardian, which took 11 years to make, and it finally came out, and it actually did pretty well. I loved it. I thought it was a great game. They made that one into a VR.
Oh, I got to find that then, because I did not know specifically that there was. I know that you can play a lot of the PS4 games with the VR headset, but I didn't know that they crafted it specifically for a VR experience.
It's a beautiful game because I love the Guardian. It's like you have your own pet in the game, you know.
Pretty
It's
much,
a little bit frustrating. People were like, "Oh, you can't always control him because he's like a living, breathing animal where you really can't control those. They have a mind of their own."
That's true.
And some of the frustration in that game was trying to get your Guardian to go where you wanted it to go to finish a puzzle. But going back to Shadow Colossus, what's your top Colossus or top two Colossus?
Okay, so that's a two-pronged I'll tell you which
two-pronged.
one I enjoyed to fight, and I'll tell you which one I enjoyed strictly just for the experience. My favorite to fight in that one was the ogre one that was in the Colosseum. It's in like a narrow hall, and you have to kind of run across a bridge. And I think you have to attack his palm because he drops his sword.
It's the
or
one where
his
you're
cleaver.
in a Colosseum. He basically has this large weapon he's holding.
That's
and
right,
you-
the cleaver thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember. That's one of the last ones, I believe. It's the
Yes.
second to last, I think.
Yeah,
That one
he's my
looks a
favorite
lot-
to engage because it was the toughest because you really had to actually. There's more so of a puzzle with that one to figure out how to get to him and get to his sigil effectively because it does take a bit and you'd end up running around a lot, wasting energy and narrowly getting missed. My favorite experience was the flying one, the completely docile, the airborne one.
You had to jump on it.
yeah,
You had to get him to go in and you had to jump on. I know that one. He was a little frustrating to get
It is.
onto. Yeah, there's so many good ones. For me, I remember the one in the, there's another Colosseum one where it's kind of like looks like a kind of like a lizard kind of creature.
Yes, that
And
climbs the walls. Yes.
He shoots this like something that comes out of his mouth. It's like some kind of gassy. If you're near it, it'll likely die right away within a few seconds, and you have to escape. And you have to go up. You have to continue to shoot at it and hit its leg, so it falls down. He falls,
yes.
but he has to fall from enough of a height, so he's in trouble. And then you jump down. You have to stab his back. He's flipped over.
I do
That
remember
one I
that.
really enjoyed because it was a beautiful. I love the ones that had a nice environment around.
Yes.
And that one really was amazing. There's so many good ones. There's one that was like this, I think the third one was this large tower one, and it was like this huge tower. He looked like 1,000 feet tall. Had this large, like a sword, but bigger, like a rock giant sword. When it slams it,
he would slam
and
it
then
against the ground, and you'd have to get him to slam it against the stone
and you
or
had
something
to,
like that.
you had to have him slam it on this like sort of a section where it was like kind of metalish, kind of
Metal or rock or something.
and
yeah.
he would have to lose his armor so he could actually go onto the top of his arm. And
That's
it's
right.
like, how do you figure these out? It was so, each one was so different and they were so unique. There was a few of the same kinds. The first Colossus pretty much looked like that one you're talking about with the sword.
Yep.
It had a few of them like that. One had a beard, I remember.
That's right, where you had to climb on his beard.
And you had to climb on his beard. So even though there were some Colossus that were very similar in the design, but you still had a different way about it. You had to find a way. It's just an amazing game. I can't say enough about it. It's just beautiful. I want to play it again on the PS4. They did such a good job on that remake. It's a remake. It's not a remastering. They remastered it on the PS3, but they remade it on the PS4.
Yes. It's so majestic. And the sheer size. Like when you actually get on to the back of, to any of the Colossi and you're actually on them and you realize when you start panning the camera around how ridiculously huge they actually are. The camera control in the game is a bit kind of wonky for some people that don't play like flying games because it's kind of like reverse direction type of thing where up down is up and up is down type of thing with the joystick. But once you get control of the camera and you get control of jumping on your horse like on call, like when he's racing towards you and you're running and jumping on him, a lot of the battles then become so much easier once you figure out how to manage the camera. And I think that's a big part of the game that some people fail to do. And it honestly makes a 3D game like this a very hard game to manage because you're trying to fight and maneuver with the camera at odd angles and you're trying to press up and run, but you got to kind of do it on an angle because the character's moving based on the camera. And when you have the camera moving and you're running at the same time, those that aren't familiar or used to the double joystick, it just becomes a harder game. But once you get control of that and you're on the backs of these things, you realize how massive in scale they built them. It just goes to show that like you could build almost like a living level. And like you said, to your point, each Colossi is a living level. The Colossi itself is an actual level. And it's fantastic to figure out what they do, how they work, because you have to break it down. Not every Colossi is the same, and each one has a different location you got to work with. Each one has a different level. Some require you to use the horse. Some don't. Some require you to use your arrow a lot. Some don't. Another small thing about the game that isn't really mentioned a lot, but I guess they're probably mentioned in the books and stuff, are the lizards. The white-tailed lizards, I think they are.
Yes.
The ones that help with the stamina.
Give you more energy, stamina. Never really going after those lizards. They were a little annoying for me, but they definitely helped you with grip because, obviously you needed as much grip as possible.
That's right.
And but I remember the controls being a little bit wonky. The Wanderer was very hard to control sometimes, and he had weird animation. But any game has a bit of a learning curve,
That's
and
right.
I feel if you're patient enough, I always got comfortable. But when you didn't play the game for a while, or the first time you're playing a game like that, it was tough to handle the controls, and it was a little bit hard to deal with. But it was never game breaking for me, where I felt like, oh, this game's totally unplayable. But then some people are impatient to control the horse or controlling the Wanderer, but I never really had that much trouble with it. I never got too frustrated because the game was so beautiful and it was such a unique experience that I would think it was such an issue for me. But the PS4 version fixed a little bit of those issues that PS2 had, the limitations with the controls back then. You know, a lot of PS2 games, they don't hold up as well as the modern games. You know, I was playing Resident Evil 4 and it was like one of those, really, have you ever tried playing that game? And the controls are just, man, it takes a real long time to figure them
It
out
does.
and get comfortable with, because they're really old school, you know? And I was playing the demo of Resident Evil 3, the remake, and it's smooth as butter, you know? They're so well done. But back in the day with the PS2, some of those games, they had some really crazy controls. It was before they perfected it, you know? The
That's
3D
right.
games.
Yeah.
So once again, it was nice to have you, CK.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And on that note, let me know what you think about Shadow Colossus. If you played any of the Team Eco games, leave a comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and I will have more videos for you in the weeks, months, and years to come. Bye for now.